Hello and welcome back to another lesson in continuing education of class. This is lesson 56 and we have about 3 more to go after this one. So, as the thumbnail reads, defense no problem or no problem defense. What does this mean? Well, if you've been paying attention to class and how it's an acronym for creativity, logic, art, science, spirituality, and now we're in continuing education, and because it was translated from different languages, classe in Latin, German, Greek, so on and so forth, and sometimes mostly ends in an E, and this is going into the emotional spectrum when it comes to psychology, sociology, and understanding the world around you. So let's get into the first point. How do you defend yourself? Well, first you have to identify the negative things that are around you, right? So what's the tone of the people, the topic, the pitch, the placement, the area, the group, the mindset, so on and so forth, right? So if you were in a room, let's say a bar, or everybody was conducting coercive behavior, right? They're ganging up, gang stalking, so on and so forth, all odds against you, etc. They want you to be a little good boy or girl, this, that, and the third, not knowing that, you have a different past, background, etc., and they keep pushing the button, so on and so forth, then they're entrapping you, right? And now there's also blackmail. In the movie Entrapment with Sean Connery, he dictated that entrapment is what law enforcement does to criminals. Blackmail is what other criminals do to other criminals. So think about it. Vocabulary means everything. If you don't remember the last lesson in class, we discussed communication and, well, how words have meaning and power, right? So entrapment is for the law enforcement side. Blackmail is on the other side. So if people are stating something, projecting, etc., having a conversation, utilizing terminology, so on and so forth, that you are already aware of and they know this, then they're just going to use it to push your buttons, right? Like a little magic spell or magic thing, because they're trying to tap into your emotional spectrum. Your CNS gets you to react already knowing that the other individuals that are either going to lie or play witness as though they did not take part in that behavior, well, obviously they're going to frame you, pretty much turn you into a patsy, etc. I had a friend that went to the intelligence community, and he said that one of the things that was told to someone of that they ended up capturing somebody, and they did this whole psychological ploy. I think I mentioned some mentalism tactics that they utilized against the individual, and they told him, good luck trying to tell anybody about this. They'll just think you're crazy, right? And they did, right? Because they ended up essentially falsifying medical documentation, giving him a mental health label, leveraging what the media dictated about certain individuals, and then, of course, let the populace carry out, because as monkey see, monkey do, people are lazy. They don't want to do their own research, so they're quick to judge, and they're never going to read a fucking book, right, to understand it, right? So the tone, topic, pitch, placement, area, group, mindset. What's the mindset of the individuals? Are you in a racist area? Do they try to hide their racism? In New York or up north, we just say fuck you to your face. In the South, they say, oh, bless your heart, right? It's the way of sounding sweet and disguising it with their language. Let's do a mic check real quick. We're still good. If you're getting anything out of this, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to, do your thing. And if you want to follow, by all means, go ahead. Now, the group think, right? There's a bunch of group think out there. Now, we might get interrupted because, well, I did not put the do not disturb. So hold on one second. I'm going to hit pause and then we're going to continue. So, continuing forward, right? The group that you're a part of, are you a part of a group that's racist, likes discriminatory language? They hide it behind closed doors, etc., but then say all the shit when they think nobody is watching, right? What's the area that you are in? Are you in the South? Are you in the North? Are you on the West Coast? Are you in the East Coast, right? On the West Coast in California, you can listen to context clues because they utilize vernacular and rhetoric such as that's hella tight, etc. In the South, they'll say y'all. In other areas, they say yo, what's up? So on and so forth. Up north, the N word is, well, a form of endearment because you flip a negative to a positive. So you say, yo, nigga, what's up? Right? And it's the same thing as saying, yo, cracker, what's up? right? You're identifying who they are, etc., blah, blah, blah. And then the way we would educate people is that if it ends in an A, you are all right, right? Because it ends in an A. Think of it like Spanish class. If it ends in an A, it's feminine. If it ends in an O, it's masculine, right? Similar concept. If you hit it with the hard ER, you end up in the ER, right? So this is why certain individuals, they have to sometimes get their past taken away or get claimed by somebody in the group because they don't know the vernacular rhetoric or whatever. Then, of course, the area, placement, tone, pitch, etc. If you were to go to a military installation and hear a drill instructor or military personnel imitate their drill sergeants and drill instructors, you may be flabbergasted at the way that they communicate, right? If you were to talk like that in the civilian world, they might say you're having a manic episode or whatever the case may be, but it's intentional. And that's one of the things that people don't get. And a lot of people that are lazy that want to utilize things like AI and technology to determine behavior or whatever, to, go ahead and do that, will be able to hack the system thanks to that, right? The misidentification, right? And if you misidentify, you're going to be lost in translation. See, I'm talking at a very steady pitch, tone, etc. But now if I prompt you like AI and I were to give you a background, now your brain has something to work with, right? And then anything else that gets introduced to that, right, will bounce off that previous knowledge and then feed back out into the populace. So remember, if you're down south and they say, I'm praying for you, or, oh, bless your heart, and you're from up north and you move down here, it means fuck you to your face. That's exactly what it means. They're just apparently not allowed to say that word in certain areas. So they say, oh, bless your heart, or I'm praying for you, etc. I mean, you could slap them in the face with a Bible. They're not going to fucking get it. So let's continue. Verbal chess with understanding. In a game of chess, right, you have black versus white, or whatever the color of the pieces are, right? White normally moves first, black moves second, just like a freestyle battle or a cipher, right? You remember 8 Mile. You had either Eminem, his character either went first or second, and then you had Papa Doc, right, etc. And then it goes on from there. But how do you verbalize the way you feel in a context that is able to get away with it? Well, in the context of a freestyle battle, you are able to come off a certain way because the brain is prompted. If you were on stage, the brain would be prompted. If you were not on stage, then people think the way they do every day, and you get looked at a different way because they were not prompted like AI, right? So we're all little Sims, pretty much, little avatars being controlled, right, with vernacular, right? And if you don't understand this, go study the judicial system and then learn how terminology can get you in trouble if you don't know how to represent yourself in a court, right? This is why they always say, make sure you have an attorney present or one will be provided for you. Unless you declare pro se and you've studied, you went to the library, etc., and you've had experience around that field or realm, right? So always remember who goes first, who goes second. The person that goes second has more time to think about certain things based upon the person that went first and why they carried out an action, right? It's like chess, right? You have to think 5 steps ahead or 5 moves ahead. A grandmaster can think 10 to 12 steps, sometimes 15 steps ahead. Why is that? Because when you say something, right, it may not hit in that moment because people might be slow. Their processing time might be a lot slower than yours, etc. So it might take some, minutes, hours, days, etc. I remember I said something to one individual and it took them a whole week to get back to me and be like, is this what you meant? So that told me exactly how fast they were able to process certain things and how quick they were able to respond correctly, right? So the same thing works in other areas, right? But think of it like, who is it? Dane Cook. He talks about how women are mind ninjas, right? There's a skit where he's like, oh yeah, they'll say stuff like, you're stupid like your father, right? And then all of a sudden it doesn't hit at that moment. And then of course, a couple minutes, hours later, you're screaming out, my father's a brilliant man, so on and so forth, etc., right? Because it took you time to look it up and everything else. So always think ahead, right? 10 to 12 days, 10 to 12 steps, 10 to 12 moves, etc. And then know the slang and vocabulary. Remember, as I stated earlier, if you're from up north, certain things are acceptable. If you're further down south before you hit Florida, certain things are not acceptable, right? So understand that, understand the jargon, understand the slang, understand the terminology. If you're in a church, they speak in code, they utilize biblical language in order to speak in code to individuals that they are associated with, but it has a double standard in meaning, because while they're telling the story or sharing something, they're also displaying and sharing a message with everyone else in the room that's in the know. So if you went to a Christian academy, a Catholic school, Catholics are Christians, by the way. Catholics just read more books. That's the little inside joke, right? Because some have 66, some have, 70 something, and then some have like 88. Ironically, Pope Francis, I think, died at 88. And I think some of the, Ethiopian Bibles have 88 books in it, or capped at that. Anyways, let's continue. Not a big deal. So you will get to hit, how do I say this? You will get hit verbally, so brace for it, right? So when you're in a verbal situation, you're going to get hit. People are going to swing and, throw a low blow, right? Because not only does it make them feel good, but it gives them the ability to feel strong in that moment, even though physically they are not, right? Have you ever gotten into a fight and they say it's not what you said, it's how you said it? Or people will go ahead and they will low blow, oh, that's why you got this diagnosis, you need to get help, blah blah blah, because they were lazy, they didn't understand, or they did understand and they're just participating, and they were told to, well, not say anything or abstain, and because they're a part of Epstein, etc., right? They got 5 on it. But remember, Lincoln sits behind bars for a reason, and he's on the $5 bill and on the penny. Why? I don't know. But, you know, think of it that way. Remember, in creativity, you're taught to think outside the box. In logic, you're taught to apply logic to your out of the box thinking, and then to make it palatable for everybody else, bring art into it, and then make sure it's replicatable before the science community wants to play scientist with you and see if your theory or your creativity hits with multiple individuals before they allow you to continue, because there's always a community, a group, a cult, a something that's going to get in your way because they feel threatened. And what is threat, or the feeling of feeling threatened? It's the feeling of fear, right? The fear of loss, right? And we all know about cognitive biases, which is loss aversion, right? People will much rather want to hang on to what they have instead of letting go of it for something better. Or they see something better, they just take it to test it, and then later on they're like, okay, well, it worked for you, it worked for me, and now it could work for everybody, so on and so forth, etc. Do you make money for it? No. Look at what happened to Tesla. You remember Trump's uncle apparently was a part of the FBI unit that ended up taking a lot of his inventions. I mean, you've seen the movie The Prestige. I mean, in the movie The Prestige, they were cloning stuff, they had wireless electricity, he was talking about time travel and everything else. Imagine if they had actual access and that existed today, right? What would they be doing with it? How would they be deploying it? What would they be utilizing it for? So understand vernacular, words, etc. If you don't understand physics, if somebody wants to play a prank on you, right, by shooting a laser beam into a room, and most people don't know, but you can travel, use sound and a laser beam to transmit sound, right, at the speed of light, for instance, right? And if you bounce that off of a reflective surface in a room while somebody's in there by themselves, they will think that they are hearing voices, when in actuality, it's just somebody on a radio shooting a laser beam into the room, which you cannot see. And obviously they get this whole thing. People will say that they're crazy, they'll go up with it, etc. But once you present that evidence to a judge and you explain the physics and you show it, pretty much the bullshit excuse of whatever that they're trying to pass on goes out the window. And then of course they have to prove scientifically on their end that they did not do any of that, when in actuality they probably did. So remember, and this is point 2, Verbal chess with understanding. Understand who goes first, who goes second. Understand that you have to think ahead, make a plan, strategize, incorporate tactics into the strategy. Just don't use tactics, right? Then know the slang and vocabulary. And then finally, accept that you're going to get hit within the game, right? Just like a game of chess, one of your pawns or one of your pieces is going to be taken eventually. Now, number 3. Practice jousting, sword fighting with trusted ones. Also, practice listening to negative conversations, right? So that you can train yourself to hear key points, some with positive conversations and comedy. So what do I mean by this, right? So jousting sword. So if you take the S in sword, move it to the end, it spells words, right? So as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned a cipher, a freestyle battle, etc., where people that are aggressive poets pretty much go back and forth like stand-up comedians and so on and so forth, go back and forth saying jokes in a poetic manner back and forth to each other. Is it negative? Is it positive, etc.? Backing up even further, it comes down to the tone, topic, pitch, placement, area, group, and mindset that you surround yourself with to let you know if it's acceptable or not and how to interpret it. This is the world around you. This is psychology and sociology, right? You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. But it does help to listen to many negative conversations, because after a while you'll start to pick up on the patterns and trends of certain conversations, and you'll be able to almost like predict the future because people just replicate each other. There's a handful of people that are creative, and that's why there's, you know, a lot of people out there that want to be creative, that want to get out there in the world, but they can't because either lack of creativity or they're just doing what the next person did, right? Remember in 8 Mile, he was like, he literally tells him, he goes, listen up, meathead, you're saying the same shit that he said, right? And I had this situation with a doctor because they were reading from a script and I could tell that they did not know what they were doing. And based upon thought, they thought they had to do something until I pulled out a tape recorder and played back verbatim what they stated. Right. And it was coming from someone else, which told me that the medical community, who's playing with the invisible, is being scripted like salespeople are scripted to say certain things at the right moment when they hear something in order to, well, have something fly by, get away with it, etc., and to sound educated when in actuality they're not deducing or deducting anything. And then, of course, at the same time, you want to practice listening to positive conversations, such as stand up comedy, right? Because it shows you how to differentiate between when somebody is being sarcastic, a joke, etc., and when somebody is not, right? You get to pick up on the comedic timing, the pitch, the tone, the area, the group, the mindset, etc., right? That I stated in the beginning. So surround yourself with some of that. And of course, I think I mentioned that in SDK, the martial arts system that I came up with, there's a portion in there that actually has conversational speech back and forth, right? Kind of like some Jedi mind trick type of stuff, right? And of course, it's just playing with psychology. But the way it's set up, it's to train you how to react, disarm, or confuse, or upset, or trigger certain emotions with vernacular and or rhetoric, right? And you can do this by combining both the understanding of negative and positive conversations, because as monkey see, monkey do. If you don't believe the monkey see, monkey do, and that people do what's replicated on television, go out to a bar or a nightclub and play the hokey pokey or electric slide and watch people take direction. Go ahead and play some hip hop song and watch people carry out actions verbatim to the lyrics, right? Similar concept. People watch movies on spies and thrillers and all this other stuff. And ironically, I was watching a YouTube video about somebody that was apparently teaching people how to do stuff. So I was like, let me see what shows up, because I've seen this before. I've seen it play out. I think I know what they're up to. And somebody ended up actually showing up thinking and accusing me of being such, which I thought was fucking hilarious, because I ran security in the military as well as played with bombs and explosives. And if things go well, hopefully I'll be able to go back, because I can't stand civilians. They don't know how to drop blouse, nor will they. And the laws don't really apply at all when you're a civilian. So fuck it. right? So let's move on to the next point. Maintain and keep your boundaries and position unless you need to adjust for understanding, right? So if, let's say, somebody tells you, oh, you got to put up boundaries, and somebody keeps pushing past your boundaries and they keep pushing the button, right? Just to piss you off, to entrap you, to blackmail you, etc., right? Well, then what you have to understand is you either have to adjust, meaning you have to get away from them, separate yourself from them. Now, if they have power, influence, they're working with a group, a cult, whatever you want to call it, right? And they have shared group think mindset, and they're all coming to, well, judge you and betray you. Well, first of all, you have to cut the cord, right? First thing you have to do is cut the cord. In other words, leave the world behind, like the movie Obama, right? Think of the little girl. She wanted to see the last episode. She didn't care about anything else. She didn't care about who passed away, etc. She just wanted to see the last episode. You have to get into that mindset, right? You have to detach yourself from emotions, right? I've been able to turn off my emotions since the age of 16. It's not hard for me because of my background, upbringing, and everything else. Detaching from my emotions and not feeling anything for someone is not a hard thing for me to do. But then again, it's hard for other people to do, right? I worked hard after I got out to learn how to reestablish emotions, but the experiences of the area in which I was at brought me back to being the ruthless person that I was in the Marine Corps and before I left, which is why I'm going back to the fleet because, well, civilians want to play around with a safety net until that safety net disappears and it becomes real, right? They don't pick up on context clues. If you're going to enact Title 50, Title 10 gets enacted first. Nobody knows why pennies are missing, but Lincoln's on both, and he sits behind bars for a fucking reason, right? So if Title 10 disappears and now you don't see a lot of veterans, you don't see a lot of military, but a lot of shit is going on, well, a lot of people are signing up for cheap labor, aka going to prison, right? Because they don't pay much there. Gary Vaynerchuk calls this the $1.80 strategy, which I think is like top pay in prison or jail. So think about it, right? By the way, he's also Jewish, so it doesn't really matter. He's also American and one of the top marketers out of New York City. So please, by all means, take your spiritual, not your spiritual, your religious bullshit and take it somewhere else. If you're into spirituality, tight, we can coexist. But if you're not, then take your ass fucking somewhere else, because a lot of people don't even read the fucking book. They just listen to somebody regurgitate whatever they are, stating based upon their own fucking interpretation without doing the research themselves, right? Remember in another video when they talked about, oh, homosexuality is bad, it says it right here. No, it dictates you will not be with another male as you are with a woman. Why? Because there's puzzle pieces, people. One has another puzzle piece than another. They don't go together, right? So if you were to end up using another entrance or exit only area and somebody has fecal matter on themselves, that would be an abomination. You have retards, right? Like Amber Heard in the Johnny Depp case, who left a turd on the bed. That's an abomination, right? But if you don't do your research, if you don't try to understand, you'll be lost in the sauce and fucked like everybody else, asking why like every day in the week, right? Now, people will go ahead and try to push through your boundaries. They will go ahead and leverage their network. They will go ahead and hack into your system. You could put your phone on do not disturb. They'll still get through, etc. They may try to accuse you of being lazy, but they don't understand what the hell it is that you do and that you're on a 24-hour clock or whatever the case may be. And so they want to get curious. They want to read your records. They want to know about you. They want to know to do what? Have all that knowledge to do what? Just to fucking know because nosy Nancy? If they're playing with the craft, i.e. technology, trying to make it look like magic or some supernatural shit, right? You have to remember in the movie The Craft, right, about 4 women, one of them who was joining the group, etc., named Sarah, I'll call myself Sarah for this, right, ends up getting betrayed by Nosy Nancy, right? But what happens at the end of the movie? Nosy Nancy gets admitted to the psych ward because she abused her power. And in law, there's something called the abuse of power in the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, dereliction of duty, right? So it transitions over and over again. It's just the vernacular and rhetoric that which you are using. Long story short, Nosy Nancy wanted to kill and murder Sarah and got people on board, and then her other two lackeys, one being a little bit more masculine than the other, you'd swear it'd be her husband and daughter, but ended up losing their ability and losing their powers as well because of everything that they did. They lost their gift. Sarah got to keep it. Now, the reason why I said I'd refer to myself as Sarah is because the same actress in the show ended up on a TV show called The Mentalist with Patrick Jane, who is also in Margin Call. So if you ever want to have someone come up to you, and if you ever remember that movie, there's a part where he goes, "Speak to me as though I was a child," right? So imagine you're standing on a balcony and it's raining outside and somebody says, "Speak to me as though I'm a child." And I say, "Feel no pain," right? Did you catch on to the quote since you wanted to use a quote, right? Or did you catch on at all and you're lost in the sauce, right? So remember, Patrick Jane was an actual mentalist in the TV show The Mentalist, right? He was a performer in the magic community. They call it mentalism. In the medical field, it's called psychology and sociology. Sociology, like social media, the study of groups and individuals, or the masses. This is why you go to mass, because you matter. You speak to the people that matter as they sit together in a congregation known as a mass group, correct? So let's continue, right? Why do you need to understand? Because sometimes people may be trying to do a little science experiment or a physics experiment or a play a game, etc., right? They say this whole MK Ultra and this, that, and the third and blah, 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 right? What if MK Ultra was just a way to find or have accidentally triggered, if you're into spirituality, because his name's in 3 of the books, Michael's Knights, right? Because it's MK, right? So Michael's Knights get woken up when you try to do MK Ultra, right? Because then if Michael's Knights stand up, because Michael was the general of a military for God, etc., and they stand up and rise and push back, now you're in trouble because you were playing with fire and there was a failsafe built in. If you're trying to control people and utilize the same tactics of mentalism and knowledge, right? M for mentalism, or K for knowledge, right? Because the K is silent, like in Men in Black, right? Then you will understand how music is a part of it, right? You've heard of ultra, right? You heard of subliminal advertising, subliminal messaging, right? You've already heard me explain the science project or the physics project that you can look up on YouTube, which is factual. Combine that with subliminal advertising, subliminal messaging while they're listening to something on their electronic device, such as their mobile phone, YouTube, etc. All you need is their IMEI, right? Along with their what? ICCID or something like that, right? ICCID. And once you have access to their phone and their stuff and you limit their finances and you know that that's the only technology that they're going to be looking at, you can take full advantage of psychological tactics and warfare being used. And this is readily available in any library that teaches military psychological tactics, military warfare, etc. If you play with bombs and explosives, right, you can't just walk in there with a 20 Mike mortar that's about this size, a little bit bigger, and just walk in and say, "I'm taking this to whatever." No, you have to disguise it. You have to hide it. You have to go ahead and change your personality. You have to get it past customs. You have to get it past the guards. You have to get it past the scanners. You have to get it past the dogs, etc. How do you do that? Well, when I cross-trained and trained 3-letter agencies and worked with EOD doing as such, because of my 20 years plus in magic, I was able to be afforded the benefit and the chance, I wanted to say opportunity, but it was taken, to work with them a couple times and to teach how this would be actually get done, because I ended up performing magic while I was in the military and they thought this would be a great idea. Why don't we just teach these guys exactly what's possible, right? How do they smuggle this stuff? How do they hide Syntex and cut half of a battery and put Syntex on the other half with a blasting cap, hide it in a laptop, and then you go? How can you hack into a mobile device, overheat the battery and have it explode if the voltage goes up, etc.? or it overheats too quickly, which can happen. You saw what happened with the Android phones in the planes, yes? What about smartwatches and devices, right? If they're wearing that, how can you overheat that, have it turn it into an explosive device, and now you take out somebody's hand that they're wearing it on? Or if they have something in their pocket, such as a phone, a beep, or whatever, now you injure their leg, it's going to be harder for them to defend themselves, etc., right? Because they can't walk, they won't have a base. So it'd be like shooting fish in a barrel or monkeys in a barrel, right? You ever played barrel of monkeys? One tries to get out and all the other ones grab on and they pull that one back down, not realizing that it's just keeping everybody in the same spot. Instead of letting one monkey get to the top, to drop a rope down and let everybody come up. I mean, think about it, right? People don't think correctly sometimes. Plus, they get prompted by different people based upon gravitas, subscribers, money, etc. So let's continue, right? Understanding is better than knowing. Why? Knowing is the storing of facts and information. Understanding, right, grasps the meaning, context, and the application of these facts and information. This is why I tell people they should listen to understand instead of being like nosy Nancy who just wants knowledge and then gets pissed off because of whatever. It's not going according to plan. This person's supposed to suffer, but then again, they don't know the terminology, so they use the terminology incorrectly. And if they come from a religious background, not a spiritual background, they may use words like blasphemy or whatever, and they don't understand the definition of that. Or if they never served in the military but been around military and picked up a thing or two, they may use things like, oh, that's stolen valor or whatever, when in actuality, stealing valor is saying that you're in the military or were in the military and you weren't, and you did certain things and you didn't, even though it could check out with whoever the fuck you speak to that worked with them. But some people don't get it until it's evident in their face, and they just won't let up, because after they're done screwing you over and incriminating themselves, well, they try to cover their tracks, and they do this with blackmail and entrapment tactics, right? And then they call all their buddies and they tell them to abstain, plead the fifth, I got 5 on it, etc. And then, of course, when the evidence comes out in court or whatever, unless they got an attorney or lawyer to erase, evidence or whatever to see if they could be trusted, and then you realize they couldn't, then right? Or they'll play enough mind games with you, hack into your technology, say that they were recruiting you or whatever, pretending to be a 3-letter agency. And if they don't know that you had friends that went to different 3-letter agencies, that they all got a response from them, got an email, a letter, etc., and then after they come in, they pass the test, etc., and get accepted, their slate gets wiped clean, and then it's different, right? They don't do it beforehand. So a lot of people get caught on that aspect, especially when they're playing with technology, trying to convince somebody that they're going to some place, or they're going to a 3-letter agency, or it's hush hush, whatever, right? Everything's being fucking monitored. I mean, think about it. If you could get Google Maps on a military installation to give you directions, you don't think Google could fucking sell that information to other countries or other businesses or other people as a advertising data, etc., so they could go ahead and acquire what they need and then get a layout of everything else? Or the Tesla vehicle that everybody drives, so on and so forth, you don't think that's being driven to a government facility and that's not mapping out and transmitting that data somewhere else that can be sold because it comes down to the dollar? Give me a break. Let's move forward, right? And we have, let's see here, not that many left. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 7 points left to go. Let's do a quick mic check. All right, we're still good. It's a little warm out here, but we're getting through it. Now, you can know what someone is doing or up to. So if you have people around you saying, I know what you're up to, I know what you're doing, it's a psychological trick. If they did, they would have prevented it or assisted you if they actually knew. So you could negate that, or they might say, or they might use coded language. Oh, this patient's mine, or this one's this one, or blah, blah, blah. When in actuality, they don't know what the hell's coming out of their mouth, and they could be getting audited at the same time because, well, if your device is listening to everything and you're listening to everything to understand, then that's your confirmation verification. And then maybe, well, you'll get an advertisement for it or something, right? So don't worry about that. But They can know what you're doing or what you're up to, but do they understand why you are doing what you are doing? And do they think, or do they think they know why you're doing what you're doing, right? Or are they playing this guessing game because they are fearful, right? So remember that. There's a lot of people that are fearful. I think, who was it? Robin Williams made the joke about Enron, right? They took your money and ran, right? Some people will say stuff like, I ran, right? They called for people to go to the military and they ran away from the military. They ended up doing something else so that they could stay stateside, but then discredit and badmouth and treat those that protect the land that they reside on like shit, even when they get out, not understanding the things that they went through and why they act and got away with certain things, right? And ask them questions like, why are you still talking? Well, because I signed up to do something that you wouldn't fucking do on top of it so that you could stay here continuing to do the same stupid shit that you're doing, whether that be running your cult, playing your little psychological games, acting like fucking children when you should be an adult, so on and so forth, etc. Adding to 22 a day. Do you know that North Carolina is one of the states in the United States that adds to 22 a day more frequently than other areas? I don't know if that has something to do with the religious nature and not the spiritual nature in the area. I don't know if that has to do with, well, let's say the racism or discrimination that they have, but it's true, and I've seen it happen, etc. I've seen people's families even contribute to 22 a day without either knowing or intentionally doing it because they're either after money, got threatened, intimidated, or they think they're playing a fucking game. And I hope other veterans hear this and understand that and they get prosecuted. If not, well, then maybe you can meet them in a sandbox and drop blouse if they even know what that means. But I highly doubt that's going to happen, right? And I can tell you right now, everyone from the fucking DOJ down will assist them with it, right? Because they have a disdain for people that are veterans or military personnel. Unless they're under contract active duty, then they have to go through other things. But if they're a veteran and it's free game, well, they just feed you out there and they make sure that they have a safety net, they have their boys, etc., right? And they fuck you over, fuck you over, fuck you over, and continue to fuck you over until something happens. Then they want to break glass and, say, there's an emergency. And you say, so? You were able to handle all this? You treated me like this? Let's see if you could protect yourself. Here's an example. In New York City, there was a Marine veteran that defended a woman from someone that was being aggressive, etc. It went a little bit far because some people don't know how to quit or stop, and they think that they could keep going. And he ended up committing manslaughter because the person got choked out, right? Well, after the media scrutinized the veteran and everything else, and people were like, oh, you better watch out, you better watch yourself, you don't want to say this, blah, 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 blah. Veterans everywhere got notified to stay away from certain areas, to not help, not intervene, etc., right? And when that happened, later on down the line, Charlotte, North Carolina, similar thing. There was a blonde white lady on a train, and I don't know what she was mumbling or saying, but there was a black gentleman right behind her, and no veteran, nobody else around, and she ended up getting stabbed in the neck and a couple other places multiple times and getting killed right there and then, right? Similar thing happened when I went to WTI training. While my time in the military, the government wanted to shut down and they didn't want to pay us. The person that was ahead of the base, in charge of the base, as well as my major that was in charge of all of us, came out and said they don't want to pay us. Fine, let's see if they need protection. Everybody drop what you're doing. You're off until they decide to cut us a check, right? Similar concept. You want to treat veterans, you want to do this with either active or veterans, right? Because the VA, veterans or active duty, you would go to the VA hospital, etc., right? So veterans and active duty, right? You want to treat us like crap. You want to put us in the media. You want to portray us a certain way. You want to do this, that, and the third. Tight. Let's see if you need protection. Let's see what you guys could do since you're so good at what you do, right? It plays out. There's no more pennies. I wonder why. Title 10 gets enacted first. That deals with the military. Title 50 is where CIA, FBI, DOJ, Homeland Security, and local authorities can all work together to prevent national security issues from happening. And the military gets in place and told to be quiet. So when the pennies start disappearing, well, you're not going to figure out why. But if they want to keep playing with targeted individuals and abusing military or veterans, then they're going to start paying attention, especially in places like North Carolina, as to why there's a fucking Navy Federal ATM at Target. I mean, think about it. You're going to individually target, play dumb, and abstain, and then all of a sudden a Navy Federal ATM shows up at Target. Now that's, a big clue for people, but they don't fucking pick up on that either, right? Because you may curse like a sailor and you look good in uniform, but if you're in civilian clothes, they don't even bother fucking asking questions. They'll just judge a book by its cover because they got prompted like AI prior to with probably incorrect knowledge that benefited the adversary to get them to treat you a certain way. I digress. Let's continue. Do not ask for motive. This only is asked when there is a lack of understanding, not knowledge of knowing, right? So if the person, like, let's take Nosy Nancy. Oh, well, what's your motive? If she was a judge, right? Let's call her Deborah, right? Deborah, the judge, right? But judge in the Bible's translated to general. It's a militaristic term, right? It's not like a courtroom or an attorney general, right? Because they defend you in court, right? With their vernacular and rhetoric, utilizing their words. Remember, moving the S to the front, i.e. jousting with their verbal sword. So don't ask for motive if you already have the information, the knowledge, and everything else, and you kept saying, I know what you're up to, right? Because you're asking for it, which means you already intended for it to happen, or you tried to play the system or gamify the system because you didn't want to understand and go to the person individually by yourself to understand. Instead, you wanted to play a guessing game. You didn't want to ask questions. This is why people have trouble when they have children when they're first born. When children are first born, they don't have words. And then people get frustrated. They're crying. I don't know what they want, blah, blah, blah. You have to utilize what's known as interpersonal communication. It's not until they learn vernacular, rhetoric, and everything else, they're able to tell you stuff and life becomes easier, right? But for about a good 2 years, you have to be inclined to read body language, listen to tone, listen to pitch, listen to the area, the group, the mindset, etc. You can't put a baby to sleep in a crowded room. Maybe if they're Hispanic or whatever, because we play loud music. But you can't put a baby to sleep in a loud room, right? You can't ask a baby, hey, are you hungry? And it automatically knows. You have to start to pay attention to understand. Life gets easier with vocabulary and words and terminology because you get a quicker response. You geniuses. Let's move forward. Do not act without understanding. This avoids causing and doing harm to yourself or others. Because if you just have knowledge and you're playing a guessing game and based on thought you think you should do something, then you are intentionally going to cause harm because you are fearful of having a full diagnostic process, right? You are fearful of testing the hypotheses, right? You want it to be tangible. You want them to have words already, like the analogy with the baby and the child, right? You want them to have words already. You want to have the answers. You want it to come quick. But that's not how doctors operate. That's not how mechanics operate, right? They have to look at the vehicle. They have to inspect the vehicle. They have to run diagnostics with the computer. If the computer doesn't know what's going on, they have to troubleshoot manually. If they troubleshoot manually, they're going to probably have to remove some parts or start pressing until it hurts so they know where to look or what's going on, right? Similar concepts, two different sides of the field, right? You have doctors that deal with the human body, mechanics that deal with, well, automobiles and other stuff, as well as engineers, because that's what mechanics are. So if you're playing a guessing game, let me ask you a question. Since you have all this knowledge, are you able to repair your own vehicle and do it yourself? Are you able to cross stitch, right? Do you know how to do the up and over stitch? Probably not, unless you're a paramedic, a nurse, first responder. No pun intended to the spiritual community. But think about it. Without understanding and just having knowledge, then applied sciences would be, well, useless and not function correctly. Because in order to have applied sciences, you would need to apply the knowledge that you acquired to make sure that it worked, so that you had understanding, so that you can leverage that within applied sciences or applied physics, if you're into AP or AS. All right. So when it comes to defense, right? Learn from hip hop artists, right? The speed, the timing, the energy. Remember, you may not like certain music, but then again, certain people don't like certain accents either, right? Or different colors of individuals. But you will accept it if it's aesthetically pleasing to the ear or eye. And in some book, it says, if they have ears, let them hear. If they have eyes, let them see. And another lesson of class, remember, this is a philosophical lecture, but I stated and I reversed the order, just like in business, right? Because debits and credits are backwards between personal and business, right? To see with your ears and hear with your eyes, right? When a baby is first born, you have to hear with your eyes. Yeah, it's crying. That's a given. But what do you see? What is it telling you? What can you decipher, right? What type of cry is that? Is that a I'm hungry cry, right? Now, you know the baby's crying. You don't have to be in the room, but you can picture stuff in your mind through sound. Is that a I'm tired cry? Is that a I'm cranky, I need a nap cry? Is that I need a bottle cry, etc.? Is it that I want to be picked up, etc.? So they have to make a gesture, because sometimes people are so fucking blind. A child has to lift his arms and go like this to let you know it wants to be picked up. You might want to have some respect for those that went to Uncle Sam's Misguided Children's Unit, aka the USMC. There's a reason why they watch over air, land, and sea. Then they break everything apart. Why do they work with the shittiest equipment? Because you treat them shitty when they come out, like a science experiment. So we're already fucking used to it, boo-boo. Why do our drill instructors talk to us like correctional officers? Because you're probably going to try to blackmail us and entrap us and throw us in prison and jail. So we're already used to that shit too. Everything has a fucking shot clock on it. You don't like my vernacular? Do me a favor. Go study psychology. Look up Sigmund Freud. Look up taboo language. Taboo language is language that has been defined to you as being as a bad thing, right? So if you hear language that disturbs your central nervous system when it goes through your ear canal, right? Because you heard a tone, a pitch, and a word. Remember, you're only getting upset because of the definition that you assign to it. Porque si yo entiende todo y tú entiendes diferentes palabras y yo estaba hablando en diferente lengua, tú no entiendes que yo estoy diciendo en este momento. If I speak Spanish, think of the Tower of Babel. It happened for a reason. So learn from the different groups, learn from the different music, right? Because they're not saying something to trigger you. They're saying something to, one, get something off their chest, come off as a artist in the area, right? But if you were to take everything at face value or the way you are prompted, well, then you're going to act the way you are prompted and the way the person that prompted you intended for you to act, right? Before you pick up someone from daycare, if they prompt you and said they did this, 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 and this, and you didn't ask any questions, you will either look for those signs when you leave, or you will ask questions, right? Now, in the early stages, remember, those who have ears, let them hear. Those who have eyes, let them see. Reverse the order. In business, debits and credits are one way. In personal, debits and credits are the other. What do I mean? I have to credit your account, right? Meaning something good is going to happen. But when you purchase something on credit, it is a bad thing in business. I have to debit your account in business or apply a credit to your debits, right? It sounds confusing, but remember, the Tower of Babel happened for a reason. So let's continue. If you are or doing the enticing, expect a reaction, whether it's positive or negative, right? This will determine if you are on the correct or incorrect side. But you have to always remember to, well, flip a negative to a positive, right? So if it continues, then the negative reaction is warranted because it was asked for. Don't ask for motive. I'll say it again. If the negative behaviors and vernacular and things like that continue to occur as you're trying to be positive and flip the situation, then it's warranted. It's who they are. It's what they were instructed to do. Let them continue, or as I like to say, please go on. You watch Dragon Ball Z? Do you like Gohan? Please go on. But don't ask for motive when you get popped in the face, or don't ask for motive when somebody cashes in on their get out of jail free card, or whatever the case may be, right? You asked for it. Give them what they want, right? This is what you asked for, right? Let's move forward. What are considered the dark arts in our time? Well, the dark arts, depending on how they're utilized, right, can be, well, psychology and sociology. In other videos, I mentioned Darren Brown. He talks about subliminal advertising and how it was outlawed in business because it was so highly effective. And there's a video, you can look this up. Go on YouTube and type in Darren Brown, Derren, and then the color brown, right? And then type in subliminal advertising. It'll give you an understanding of how the brain can be controlled without any technology. When you incorporate technology, you can control people like an avatar, right? And then you can also do this to the masses as well. And this falls into the realm of mentalism within magic. But if magic is real, they just change the vernacular. Well, then marketing is the magic of a business because it makes the money, makes people happy, etc. Finance manages it. And then, of course, operations distributes it. And then, of course, sales answers any objections and things like that. But they're not really doing a lot of hard work. That's why they normally get paid off commission unless they're leading people like a sales manager who normally ends up on salary because they have to lead people and watch over them. And then they also get a commission on top of it, not like the marketer who actually does a lot of hard work to convince the masses to do business and part with their hard-earned dollars. Because it takes a lot of thinking power to get into the minds of thousands of people in order for them to spend money at your facility. But if you think it's easy and it's just pictures and words, by all means, boo-boo, go for it. Give it a shot. Go ahead. Don't read the advertising policy and find out why you caught a lawsuit. Other dark arts in our time can be psychology with technology. Remember, I told you about the physics experiment mixed with psychology, right? And then, of course, credentials assist in that, right? If people are up to no good, they could hide behind their credentials. Oh, what do you know? You're not a doctor. I'm looking at your resume. I'm looking at your background. You don't have a PhD. You don't have this. And now they could attack you that way. And then you have one or two ways of responding. You can say, yeah, no, I'm not a doctor, so on and so forth, etc., blah, blah, blah. You're completely right. The way I would respond is, yeah, you're right. I don't have a PhD. I tried to go to further school, and when I tried to utilize some of my benefits, somebody hopped on the phone and in less than 5 minutes dictated and made a judgment or whatever without even hearing anything because they were prompted to do so. But I did go to the library, the same one you went to. And I went online and I looked up the curriculum and read the same books you did. I may not have the piece of paper, but I do have the knowledge and I read to understand. So could you please show me your evidence? Could you please show me your reports? Could you please show me your justification? Or was it all about a paycheck? Because you need Greenland, right? You need greenbacks, American green dollars to purchase more real estate, right? To get a bigger house, to have assets, to play a game, to have power and control over people. Do my bidding like a slave. Another area of the dark arts would be, well, the first move disadvantage, right? In a game, right? You're able to move first, but then you can't see what's happening. The person going second has an advantage, similar to a freestyle battle, right? Because if somebody goes first, the person going second can play off of what the person that went first stated, right? And then from there, they can have a strong advantage because they can not only play upon it, but then make fun of it, so on and so forth, etc. If it's in the moment, it happens a lot faster, but you have to understand people's speed, right? And then, of course, the very dark portion of the dark arts area would be belief and faith mixed with psychology. So belief and then faith and then psychology. Psychology is logical, scientific, etc. Can be replicated and done by many people, just like the mentalism effects that I discussed. People don't have an issue with that. They just have to be prompted as to what it is that you're doing. Faith and belief. Do you believe in your, in your currency? Right? Do you believe in that? Do you believe in the plastic that you're using, the credit card, whatever? Do you believe in the device that you're using? Do you believe privacy actually exists? Do you believe that laws in the Constitution should be followed? Do you believe in a deity, an architect, a god, whatever? Then they play with that, right? This is part of the dark arts, right? Faith come by hearing, belief come by sight, as was once said, right? You can hear as much as you want and you can kind of believe it, but you have faith when you see that shit, right? And somebody else does it and you're like, whoa, that can be done? I want to try that now. I had belief in it before. I heard a lot about it, but until I saw it, I think I'll take a leap of faith now because that one survived. It's like a science experiment, right? One person comes out with something, all of a sudden it works, and then you want to try it. You want to take a leap of faith and try something new, right? But don't be a bitch. Excuse my language. This is for educational purposes. However, using different vernacular, rhetoric, etc. is something that I like to do, and it's beneficial, right? Because it keeps you flexible and adaptable when it comes to speaking to different individuals in the context and framework in which they need to be addressed depending on the situation, right? Now for the last point, right? The last point would be, so what are the arts of defense to keep you alive, keep you out of, reach, neutralize the oppressor? Well, flipping a negative to a positive is a good thing, right? Once you discover that it doesn't matter and people are getting away with not abiding by the Constitution, laws, and everything else, well, then you could play by the same rules. You just have to work on a different level. See, most people will learn tactics of or strategies of deception that resides in the middle, like a defense, like a defensive line or a defensive barrier. Some hold the line, some don't. And then, of course, you have those on one side that would manipulate and use that to manipulate individuals to get them to do something for them or be bad, etc. So that's your MD, not medical doctor, but mental doctor or medical doctor, whatever. You can utilize that acronym if you want because they're playing with the invisible, or psychiatrists, which are legalized drug dealers. But they don't call them drugs, they call them pharmaceuticals. Remember, vernacular matters because they pay taxes, and it's not a drug, it's medication, etc. So that prompts the brain to accept it as such because it's been defined as such, right? And then, of course, you have DI, right? Not a drill instructor, but it could be, right? I'm going to influence you to make you better, right? I'm going to use tactics of deception to make you better. I'm going to scream. I'm going to shit on you. I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to inform you that all this shit is going to happen beforehand to make you better. I'm not going to fucking manipulate you or give up on you when you have given up on yourself because I'm not a bitch like that, like some of these other people. Right? You signed up for this. I'm putting my all into it, and I can only ask for the same thing in return. But if you don't want that, boo-boo, you could go out the fucking door. Fair? Fair. That's your introduction to boot camp, by the way. One of them. Loosely based. If you're a Marine. They have drill sergeants in other areas. DS, right? DIs are different. Drill instructors, right? What's the difference between a teacher and a professor? I don't know. What's the difference between a drill sergeant and a drill instructor? Think about it. So if you got anything out of this lesson, Take this with you. Flip a negative to a positive. Learn about the dark arts. They even teach them in Harry Potter, right? The dark arts. So you know how to defend against them, right? So study psychology, study technology, study physics, study sociology. Keep up with some of the technological advances and what's going out. Don't be scared to have conversations. Study the vernacular, study rhetoric, study prompting, because it's readily happening with AI now. It's done with humans. It can be done with technology. But if it's man-made, 9 times out of 10, there's a flaw somewhere that someone can find. And as I stated once before, and this goes for people in relationships that got out of relationships, that are still friends with those that they had relationships with, if you picked a lock once, if you know how to pick a lock once and they did not change the locks, then you still have the combination and you still know how to pick the fucking lock to get in the door. So change the combination or change the lock. Anyways, till next time, my friends, have a good one. Peace. And why do I say change the lock? Well, that gives premise to the Tower of Babel, confusing their languages. You just switch the combination. Till next time, adios, and I'll see you in lesson 57. This was lesson 56, and we're wrapping this up as far as this first portion of continuing education. Take care. I hope you have a great day. Love ya. Bye. Peace.